Good afternoon, everyone. Both here in the pouring rain, I hope you can hear me, and those that are joining us online. We are hoping that the weather will get a little bit more quieter as we go, but let's see how it goes. Welcome to this session on reimagining collaboration, where we have a wonderful panel of people that we have asked to join us in discussing what do we need to reimagine, how do we need to look at collaboration in a different way. We have heard through the last week, and we are continuously hearing that collaboration, we need more collaboration, we need better collaboration, we need to build more trust with one another. And this session is really to explore what that can be. And we're going to do that with a little bit of a rain dance and a little bit of a thunder in between, because everyone knows that when you are in very, very good collaboration, there is sun, there is rain, and there are some thunderclouds. As we get started, my name is Solveig Helga Sofoniasdottir, and I work for an organization called Climate Kick. We focus on knowledge innovation throughout various different type of cities, industry, education, and it's all in partnership, in collaboration. That's enough about us. I'm joined here by our wonderful panel, and I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves very briefly, though. Can I start with you, Bart?
Good afternoon. My name is Bart de Waal. I'm director of Join for Water, an NGO working on water services, water resource protection, and climate resilience. I speak today on behalf of my colleagues in Uganda and the Andes.
So how appropriate that you are working for Join for Water for this.
Hi everyone, my name is Manuela Cantalici and I'm from this country, and I find it amazing that we are at COP now and it's raining so much that you can barely hear what we have to say. But I think that nature is making their voice be heard right now. Nature is saying we are the ones that actually have the voice and the power in this place. So I actually would like for us to don't think that the rain and the noise is a bad thing, but it's actually a great thing that we can hear nature, that we can hear the sound of the rain as being a part of these conversations around collaboration, as much as all of the stakeholders that we're going to be talking about today. But by the way, my name is Manuela Cantalici, and I'm the focal point for Indigenous peoples and local communities at the Tropical Forest Forever Facility, TFFF, which is this blended finance fund that is being spearheaded by the Brazilian government together with other 11 countries. We had a pledge last week, $5.5 billion have been put into TFFF. There's still a lot to go, but it's a pleasure to be here.
And over to you, Crystal.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Crystal Scholten, and I'm the Managing Director of Rios Partners. I'm originally Canadian, but I've been living in Brazil for 20 years. Rios Partners is an international social impact consultancy. We've got offices in Brazil, North America, Europe, Middle East, Africa, and we've been working on collaboration, multi-stakeholder collaboration for over 30 years in different issues and topics, so climate, energy, food systems, health, education, equity, peace, governance. So we've got a lot of experience with collaborations, but we're also looking at how do we continue to innovate that with all the challenges that we have and the need for even better and more effective, more impactful collaborations.
Okay, admittedly, since I'm listening to this, I'm wondering what this pie wants to tell us. Is it
stop negotiation because you don't listen to another. I think this is nature is here and you need to protect it, and we're stronger than yours. So get your things around and move and act. Definitely making it quite challenging to do what is really important to reach, I think, good collaboration is communication starts with listening. And in these conditions, it's very difficult to listen. But I do think, and sorry, I'm continuing on this noise is probably a more natural one than the noise we had during all the last weeks here at COP, where we were basically doing one event next to another one, next to another one, shouting our messages out in parallel, even though ultimately we have a shared common purpose, which is working to save humanity, working to protect nature. And I think this would be what I would like to start with. Let's bring our voices and our energy together instead of and having the power for all, but in a quite catalytic way, I think. So I'm saying this speaking from Wrench on one side. So Wrench on One is a network of governments, industry, NGOs, science academia dedicated not only to renewable energy, but to building a renewable-based economy for prosperous and resilient societies. My name is Ranadeep and I'm heading the Secretariat. Thank you, Rana.
Hello everyone, Yuri Suarez. I'm from the IDB Lab, and I lead the impact and also the climate agenda at IDB Lab. So wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for having us here. I will just say that a huge amount of what we do at IDB is collaboration, and I think we're collaborating with probably everyone on this panel in some way or another, on energy, on forests, entrepreneurship, mobility. So that's we understand that collaboration is absolutely critical. We're leading the MDB group, and that's also collaboration across different development banks. We're working with ministers of finance across the region on many issues related to climate. With central banks also, we launched an initiative on de-risking with central banks to fund everything that we need to do here. So we're all in. This is part of our agenda, and I'm delighted to be with you.
So thank you all for just giving a little bit of glimpse of who you are, and also speaking a little bit into what collaboration and what is going on here for you. I want to ask you and ask us to dive into the first part of the conversation that is really focused on what are the emerging forms of collaboration that you are seeing are promising in terms of accelerating our climate action, accelerating, then helping us listen better, building more bridges, building more trust. So what are you seeing now that actually is amplifying that? What is currently ongoing in your practice that you think is promising? And maybe, Rana, you mentioned in terms of this, we need to listen better to one another. So maybe we start with you, and then whoever feels free to bridge in here.
Thank you very much. I actually think this is a very, it's probably one of the most important questions of these days, I would say, because we all seem to agree that collaboration is super important. We all seem to understand that we need to change the system, which also means like moving to new rules that are governing our energy system, the economy, society, and much more. We are not giving a very good example in this space of how these things can happen. And I think one of the first part I would say is it's really a pity because normally COP is where we're coming along here for climate mitigation and adaptation, for resilience building. And interestingly, this is probably one of the few events and negotiation processes where different ecosystems of the economy and society are present. And still, we have managed to have very siloed discussions. And I think this is, for me, one of the learnings is we really need to invest in the space. And even if you look at the action agenda, you see, which was meant in a very ambitious way from the presidency, I think it is, in the end, really contributing to the fact that the cross-cutting topics do not have the attention, and we have like an energy target, a water target, resilience is only in the city space, there's transport, etc., even though all these things are interconnected. So I think that's the first part. My recommendation here, and that's probably learning from Wrench on one side, being multi-actor across different ecosystems, but dedicated to one topic, which is building a renewable-based economy, is diversity is a mess, but diversity is a strength. We are not going to be able to solve the problems we try to solve, and we need to problem, by bringing experts in the room. If it was just experts from my silo finding the solutions, we would already be here. See, and so I think this is definitely one part, is let us create spaces where we can really, and I think this is not an easy task, but where we build thought leadership across the ecosystems, where we build thought leadership on nexus topics. And this also means listening and understanding that we speak from another perspective, and we need to invest in building a common language.
Thank you, Dana. Maybe Crystal, over to you, because I know you have practical experiences in Rios of building these types of collaborations. What are you seeing from the field there?
Yeah, I think I'd like to pick up on your point as well, just in terms of the dialogue and the listening. So we've supported collaborations, many of which are 50 organizations, 100 organizations that are working on a specific purpose. So a few of the examples, one is a 7-year collaboration that we've facilitated in Brazil in the fashion industry, for a more sustainable and fair fashion industry. And I think what you're talking about, this diversity, what we often do at the beginning is to map what is the microcosm of the system that needs to be in the room. So it's the private sector, public sector. Public sector. I said public sector.
Indeed, you said public sector. I did notice that that was the moment of some sort of an intervention from the heavens. What that means, let's see.
Yeah. So public sector, private sector, activists, media, nonprofit organizations, international organizations, the people, the farmers, or the people, the seamstresses in this case. So bringing the whole microcosm in the room, so you're not having those silos, and that you're really looking at what is this overall long-term ambition that we have, and then seeing what do we need to do. So what are the structural issues that we need to work on, and how do we work those in work streams, but also connected and supporting that. And the theory of transformation that we work with is really underlying all of that is creating the conditions so that trust, dialogue, collaboration can actually happen between very different perspectives and opinions. So we do a lot of work on building the trust, the capacities in the inner transformation, so within the individuals themselves, but also within the teams, the groups, the sectors, to make sure that we're creating those conditions, which then will create the results. If you don't have that base, then it's really difficult to get the public policy shifts, the new solutions, public policy shifts, my goodness, the new solutions, and also the transformation in terms of the narratives and the new cultures.
I know, Crystal, that we have in our joint collaborations, we've talked a lot about looking at patterns and understanding patterns, and I can for sure hear that there was a little bit of a pattern of you dancing with the weather there. I maybe want to invite you, Manuela, to comment also here in terms of what is emerging, what do you think is needed? I know that there has been a lot of focus on collaboration in your work now.
Absolutely. I think that TFFF is the miracle of collaboration. The fact that we first could come together as the different ministers within the Brazilian government to create this, and then the connection with the other tropical forest countries, as well as investor countries, and then like thinking about the collaboration with the investors and with indigenous peoples, local communities, and that's the part of the work that I've been the closest to, and it's been fantastic. I think that TFFF is really initiating a paradigm shift when it comes to bringing indigenous peoples and local communities to the center of the finance table. negotiations and decision making, no longer as beneficiaries, but as partners. I think that's one of the main things. So when we are talking about collaboration, it's really important that everyone is actually invited to partner up. And that's what happened with TFFF. We have invited the Global Alliance of Territorial Communities that represents 24 countries, almost 1 billion hectares of standing forest, to come together with us and design how can we make the funds actually reach the ground. Because if we have the same usual suspects on the table, we're never going to figure it out. So I feel like one of the main things when it comes to the solutions is like bringing the people that were not usually at the decision making table to the center of it, and then we might have a solution, have something different.
Thank you. And Pat, I know that we have collaborated a little bit in novel ways between Climate Cake and Join for Water. What are your thoughts here in terms of how we can accelerate implementation of collaboration?
Well, I think it's not so obvious to have people work together, and you may bring them together around the same table, but not all may be able to participate. So this leaving no one behind is a reality. So, and we've seen that in Uganda, where we worked on a project with women river ambassadors, warriors, abbreviated. We needed to strengthen their capacity so that the barriers, the knowledge barrier and the social barriers that hamper them to really participate are not there anymore. And so we've seen the same in the Andes region, where we have worked on a binational collaboration with communities to manage together the watershed. There we've seen that not all groups, even if you would want it, can participate like this. And a key for this positive discrimination is a shared learning platform. We've seen a curriculum in Uganda that was developed for all stakeholders, including women, so that everyone gets on top of the same level of information. And in the Andes, we have worked with a school, a water school, where every group is able to analyze the situation, to be informed about what is going on in the watershed, and also get the same type of information on what could be done. So you need some positive discrimination to get everyone on board, and learning can be key for that.
Yeah, thank you for that, Pat. I want to pass it over to you, Yuri, for sort of the final comments on this question before we move forward. What are you seeing from your side that is positive signs of collaborations and implementation?
So I think in this agenda, the instances of collaboration are endless. They're everywhere. I think a common diagnosis that this is important. This is something that's globally important. That it's a global public good that we need to all get together, and that it somehow threatens our livelihoods in the future, as well as the planet in general, but mostly our livelihoods. I think the planet will be fine. I think that's opened the space for a tremendous amount of collaboration. So I think that's, in a way, it's difficult to find a sector where you have more collaboration, frankly. I mean, I work across other sectors, and even in topics such as gender and diversity, which is something I also work on a lot, you do not have the shared understanding and kind of common purpose that's mobilized the amount of funding, the amount of joint programs. It's almost unique, I would say. For the IDB, I think we put ourselves in a role. We are a bank, we're a development bank. We're expected to collaborate to raise funds for the agenda, and we do that. We just announced 160, I always forget the last digit, I'm going to say 2 to be conservative, 162 billion of climate finance across all of the MDBs. That's real money. That makes a difference. But I would also say that on the policy sphere, we've worked with every single government in the region, and we've had much more demand for collaborating across the different line ministries than we could possibly have anticipated that we would. So I think the demand is around you. It's everywhere, and we're just happy to be facilitators, provide funding where we can, provide expertise where we can, and connect government, civil society, and other actors where we can also.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm hearing very positive signals and positive things that we are doing in terms of the collaboration. But I also want maybe just to tease out a little bit because I, I think that there are also signals of that we need more. And we need more deep collaboration, we need more intentional collaboration. We also need collaboration that possibly is creating a little bit of tension between us, and then we need to be able to rumble with those tensions and those difficulties that collaboration essentially invites us into. And I've been observing this in a couple of the conversations here in terms of, yes, we're all in collaboration, but we all want our own logos and we want our own things and we want to make sure that we're all visible. How do we deepen? How do we deepen collaborations? How do we build more trust? How do we make sure that we take care of our courses and the collective cause at the same time? And just so throwing that out there, I know, Rana, you've already raised your hand a little bit here. Let's see who wants to come after you.
Okay. No, just because it echoes very much, I mean, we operate as a network of networks, let's say. We have over 120 institutional members. We have a community of 4,000 plus players. This part of who has a logo where is something that is very present, even in a network. When it comes to, for instance, fundraising, you see, like, we observe this very much, that basically there's always the question, how do members, and we hear this from any membership-based organizations, you see, members and the network, sometimes members see themselves in a competition to the network, and I think this already shows, like, I would agree, we need more collaboration, but we also need different types of collaboration, and I think this also means that we need to really invest the time and take the time, and I think sometimes slow down a bit to really understand the roles and the responsibilities and the accountabilities in driving the change of the different players and the complementarities. And this basically, what does this mean? I think it's what you really touch upon, Sola, on the how do we build trust. And here I would say it is not only on the more, it is also on the how. And I would very clearly say that when we're looking into new ways of collaboration and driving systems change, we also need to acknowledge that we have probably not always taken into account very well the integrity of human beings, that we all have a historic legacy, organization-wise, as decision makers, that when we're running here through the rooms, we're kind of sometimes our body, our heart, and our minds are in 3 different time zones. You see, like, and that there is really this part. I mean, I always think, like, if in the negotiation room you would have half an hour of joint drumming or meditation or whatever, we would probably be able to connect much more to the essential things. So I also think it's about finding new ways of creating those trustful spaces.
Yeah, so connecting in multiple different. I see a pattern again here, Crystal. You're reaching out for the mic. Do you want to come in?
There's so many points that you are bringing in that I'd like to build on. I think just starting with that one in terms of years is ensure that we have Indigenous peoples, peoples representing Black populations that are in the room as co-creators, and we're inviting ceremony and rituals and drumming. And what I've found is that it has a huge impact on the space itself in creating the possibility for the dialogue and the collaboration, but also impacting the actual results of whatever the work is. So we've started to bring that in much more and ensuring that that's a core part of it. One other thing that I just want to bring in was one of the collaborations that we're supporting is the Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet. So this is a long-term to really influence the whole energy transition. It started with 20 core organizations, now it's up to about 50. But they really understood that, getting to your point about we sometimes have challenges with collaborating, that collaboration is difficult. So they produced a field guide for how can you collaborate better. And it's talking about moving from partnering to actually alliancing. which is a new term that we start to be using, where we're building with multiple partners, where you have a shared goal, and you're bringing all your strengths to that shared goal. So it's moving from just delivering together. So there's projects, initiatives that you could be delivering together. It's also influencing the agenda, and then also enabling and scaling impact. So there's some new things that are starting to happen with that.
Thank you. Any other? Are we following the same pattern? That's absolutely fine. No, go ahead.
I can always say something, eh?
Yeah.
But listening to the actors you want to bring together, so they can be highly diverse. And in our case, we often bring together civil society with governments. That's the case, for example, in the Andes region, where we have many government organizations, both from Peru and Ecuador, and then both civil society from both countries. So how do you get them together in a fruitful way? So you need time. So we've been we set up meetings of several days, general assemblies that last. So and then the people who are there, they need to have legitimacy. So the recognition why they are there. And so for many civil society organizations, it's because they have needs that need to be fulfilled in terms of water, environmental protection. And for government people, it is important that there's some legality there so that they can recognize that what is going to happen there will serve their official goals. It is also implementing government policy. So if the legitimacy is there and the legality is there, then we have everything in place to build a common vision, both bottom up and top down. And for this to happen, you need to create a framework of time and relationships. So just to confirm what you said.
I think that's very good. If you could pass the mic just onwards, and that no, oh, you're gonna have to be last in this one.
So the only thing I would say is to kind of, I think we maybe need a little bit of a gut check, right? So if we look at natural disasters, humanitarian crises, there are plenty of examples of a tremendous amount of collaboration with poor outcomes, right? In our own region, I think Haiti comes to mind after the earthquake. I think there was a lot of individual logos, individual flags everywhere. Um, and I think the overall diagnosis after that, and that IDB shares, is that it was not as effective, not nearly as effective as it should have been, given the amount of funding, the amount of resources, the amount of high level, high reputation institutions in the UN system, in the multilateral system, and in civil society. So I think maybe kind of the gut check is not always like more is better necessarily. The gut check I would say is what are the impediments for collective action, for coordination failures, which are hugely important in economics, right? So the textbook example of coordination failures in climate is what if you do all of this electromobility but no one figures out the charging stations? Then you're like, well, no, it's not going to work. So I think maybe a little bit of thoughtfulness in that direction in terms of how we can bring the right, knowledge, resources, efforts. And is it a synchronization issue? I'm not smart enough to give you an answer to this, but I would be a little bit more hesitant because about kind of the quality of collaboration because we all have different objectives as institutions, and I'm not sure the collaboration is in. It is in some of your DNAs. It's not in everyone's. Yeah, I would put that out there as maybe a little point of.
Maybe, Manuela, will you come in here and then I'm gonna shift us a little bit into a different space.
I really like the comments around the quality of this collaboration and if more is always better or not for collaboration. And I really think that it's important for us to think about what are the rights holders, not only the stakeholders that we are talking about here, and also the facts that we are not coming into a collaboration from the same place. So I think it's really important for us to know that it's not going to be a blank slate, especially when we are connecting with indigenous peoples and local communities, for example. There is a history until where we got here. So when we are building trusted relationships, we're not only talking about Manuela and like this other person that I'm speaking to, but we're talking about historical process that have led us to a place of autonomy or not, of power or not. So all of the things that we are bringing, kind of like this historical baggage to when we are collaborating. So I think that it's really important for us to acknowledge those and to bring people to the same level, so to speak, in the sense of really thinking about the translation. So how can you translate worldviews from a holistic point of view to someone who is more like Cartesiano, and I think that's really important, even in terms of language itself, right? Like how can we come together with the different languages? So when we are collaborating, that also needs to happen, not just from the point of view of how you think, but how you speak, and also to create the opportunities for people to be in certain spaces. So even like COP, being a COP is a privilege. Not everyone could come here so we could collaborate. So I think that's also important when I'm thinking about systems change, is that everyone needs to be a part of it, but we're not everyone on the same level. So how we bring everyone to the same space.
Yeah, thank you for that, because that's also very important in terms of our actual blind spots of who are we in relationship and conversation in. There was something when you were talking that sparked in me. I'm Icelandic. I come from up north in Iceland, very rural community in some ways. And there is a bit of a Icelandic saying that I won't repeat here, but it is in essence, it's really around you build relationships because we might need to collaborate. So there's a lot of focus in terms of you're constantly building those relationships because you know at some point we're going to have to rely on one another. And that, with that, I am wondering, so what is the preemptiveness? What do we need to do in order for us to start building towards better collaboration? So what do we need to do now? Is it the giving ourselves more time, paying more attention to the translation, joining across? If you had a completely blank slate now and you could say, everyone here, this is what we need to pay attention to, these three things, what would it be?
Speak from the heart. I think that we need to speak from the heart more. We need to be able to have spaces that we can be more vulnerable and not speak only as our organizations, but also as human beings, because in the end of the day, like you said, we're establishing relationships as humans. So I loved everything that was said here about like meditation, breathing, drumming, more time together. And actually COP itself, right? We have like so many panels, so isn't it about time that we can also kind of like reflect or reform in terms of like how we use our time? Because when you said that you don't have the answer, yes, none of us have the answers alone. Like the answer is always in the collective. So how can we open space for this collective wisdom to be brought up more frequently? And in order for that to happen, we really need to change the model of how we come together and spend our time and invest our time.
Do you want to come?
Yeah, sure. I think if there's one thing we need to take care of is to make sure that the big ideas that circulate here and the complex ideas, quite abstract quite often, that we translate them into something that we can relate to, not only us but also the people we need to collaborate with, and so that it is recognizable, that we can connect to it emotionally, and that it means also intellectually something for those who are far away. I had a meeting here with 4 youngsters from they are between 20 and 30, from the Benin World's Water Parliament. And they've been here, and they say, when we go back, we go to the villages, and what we have understood here, we will translate it up to the level of the villages. And we also want to propose concrete solutions that link up to local policy. So I think that sounded like a good thing to do and to share here.
Any?
Three is not a lot, but I would say like embrace the unknown and remain always curious. I think this is basically the part. Redefine legitimacy, I think, because I would actually say we tend a bit to say that we're legitimate to participate in a discussion when we're an expert in the field or whatever. But the reality is very often questions that are going to trigger new solutions. And you don't need to be an expert basically to ask questions, you see, like so. And I would say with regard to this, it also means like changing some of the governing rules and the spaces we create to have basically secure spaces where people who might not be experts still have a seat around the table. We engage and agree to listen basically to them, but we also embrace the tension it brings because I think, you see, like coming from a renewable energy side, there is not a lot of spaces where renewables and fossil fuel players sit in the same room to actually agree and have listen to each other and probably say like this is a reality we also need to embrace because it is structural barriers that are there. Policymakers, I take the example of Norway that have 100,000 people working in fossil fuel, where the tax income and the part of GDP is really high. This is a real barrier to change. It does not mean that the policymakers do not want to change, but they have constraints with regard to this. And if we basically don't create those spaces where we can also have these difficult discussions, I think we will continue coming all back from COP and saying, it was great, we had 100,000 great events, we met super cool people, our agenda is moving forward, but I'm not always sure if collectively we have advanced.
Thank you, Nana. Either side, which? Crystal?
So the question that you asked, if you had a blank slate,
Yeah,
right?
you get to choose
Yeah.
those things that we are all collectively going to do so it gets a bit easier for us to collaborate.
Yeah, so if I remember the early days of our work, we would have much more time. I felt like things are rushed now. Before we would used to have 3-day workshops, time in nature, and now it just seems like everything has to be done in 2 days very quickly, you know, in a more of an urban space. So my blank slate would be going back to nature. We often did 3-day retreats in nature with the whole group, where you're actually going through a whole process of connecting to what's real, the natural world, what is your core purpose, what are you here for, how can you connect with others that also want to go in the same direction, but maybe not in the same way. There might be a lot of conflict in terms of different ideologies, but at some human level, we're connected. And so I would come back to, you know, much more time, space in nature, ritual, meaning, who are we as human beings? And then obviously you need to have what is our long-term goal, where do we want to go, how are we going to do that? But I think some of that fundamental creating those conditions is really important, and we've lost a lot of that. But then obviously when you get to the work is just maintaining that level of trust and commitment and relationship with the other, even when you're in difficult situations, but making sure that you're aligning your efforts and that you're actually making some progress, learning from that, the cycles of learning. So I feel like sometimes we're too rushed and we're just not sitting back and reflecting and saying, okay, this didn't work, let's move something, let's change course. So that would be my blank slate.
Thank you. Yuri, do you want to come in?
Very quickly, because listening to this, I also thought there's one, because we spoke about the speed, but I think there is one aspect which is a reality everywhere in the world for the moment, and this is disinformation. It is amplified disinformation, and I also think like we really need capacity building on this part of understanding where the information comes from, what it means, checking back, and then understanding that if you want to use data to tell a story, you can always use the same data to tell different stories. And I think this is really something that is kind of a foundational part also in our decision-making process that is a bit disregarded.
Thank you. Yuri?
I feel like I've contributed a lot to the humidity of the room. I'm almost dry. So coming from my background, right, which is MDBs, but also on the entrepreneur venture space. So um, from the MDB space, just because we have so many shareholders and we need to make sure it always works together, I think it's embracing shared agendas. And they may not be your agenda, but they're shared. Now, that doesn't mean that I fully appreciate, and I hope, and Brazil's a great example of advocacy all across the spectrum. It's healthy, and we support that at the IDB, okay? But we have to have our own shared agenda internally. So I think that's super important. From more the venture space, I would say one thing that we can learn in this space from startups and entrepreneurs is embrace failure, embrace it. I've never seen a startup work on the first attempt. Usually it's on the third or fourth, and they're okay with it. We're not okay publishing our failures. They're fine. So I think there's a little bit sometimes I feel a group think that we don't recognize what's not working, or we kind of shift it somewhere else. That's not healthy. It's not going to help us. It's not going to help our agenda. So I would put that also in. I don't know. Be kind. Kindness. It's super important if we want to work together. So those are my three.
Thank you. And thank you all. I feel like this panel conversation of 50 minutes has so many micro expressions of what it is that you are actually bringing in here. The kindness, the humor, the nature. It would be interesting if we had done it completely outside and seen how we would survive. The humidity you brought in, that's wonderful. I would love to just thank you very much for the perspectives and thank our audience that is online and here in the room, and more to come on this conversation. Thank you so much. No, I don't know.